Welcome to our Saturday Simulcast, joined by Tom Dienhart here from black.com. And this is our first week in June. Tom, hard to believe we're just a couple months away, or actually about a month and a half away from the start of a lot of the fall that goes on with the starting of Big Ten football, which will be happening in July in Chicago, but also that it is getting near time to we're going to take this Saturday simulcast to kind of evaluate where Purdue sits, where the Big Ten West may look like at this point, and knowing that the world can still change because of transfer portal and other things that can happen between now and that first weekend of football. I want to thank our sponsor, the Union Club Hotel, and 811 Bistro, of course, Boiler Up Bar as well. Tom and I sat in did a couple shows from there last year. We'll probably those again this year. We'll look forward to that as well as we get into the 2022 season. Tom, it's conventional wisdom, and you've followed this as close as anybody else in terms of, I guess I'll start with Purdue and that schedule. And I know you have to be really careful, and yet on paper, years you've been watching Purdue football, this is probably, and the right combination of a team that should be competitive. This is a schedule that really looks on paper about as good as you can get. I mean, you've got Penn State to open the season. Your toughest road games are at Wisconsin and Minnesota, it appears at this point. But as all the years you've been watching, how do you break this down? How do you look at how Purdue, with an experienced quarterback, rolls into the 2022 season?
Yeah, they're going to have first. They're going to have the Big Ten Media Day back in Indianapolis again this year.
Oh, that's right, not Chicago. I apologize.
That was something I just tweeted out a while or so ago. I think they really liked having the event down there last year.
Yeah,
it worked out well having it in Lucas Oil Stadium, so they're going to do it again this year. I'm not sure what that means for the future. Going back to Chicago and having that banquet again, that was a big part.
Yeah,
that people always liked a lot was that banquet. They had a chance to get autographs and whatnot. So yet another change in the landscape that always is morphing before our very eyes. And yeah, this schedule, I tell you what, it does set up for success for Purdue. You think the big key, I don't think it's a great observation, but obviously you win that first game on Thursday night at home, national television on Fox, just a great opportunity for Purdue to show what it's all about. I think this is maybe Jeff Brom's best team yet. And to be able to set the table with a win versus Penn State. And this isn't a vintage Penn State team, at least on the surface, it doesn't appear to be. They're just a 500 program the last 2 years. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I think it's a beatable Penn State team. And I think it's a game Purdue's got to win, frankly. I really do. I think you got to find a way to beat this Penn State team. If you do, I mean, if you really want to start chugging the Kool-Aid, I think you got a chance. Where I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think there's a chance Purdue could be 7-0 as it goes to Madison, Wisconsin on October 22nd. And we all know the whammy Wisconsin's had on Purdue. I think it's like 15 wins in a row. And the last win, I think you have to go back to 1990. What is it? I can't remember.
Well, in Wisconsin, it was 2003 with the Ben Jones Field.
Yeah, 2003.
Right.
So, yeah, that was that's going back quite a distance here. 18 years or so, 19 years. So yeah, maybe 7-0. I know. I'm assuming they're going to win at Syracuse, at Minnesota, at Maryland. We all know winning at Minnesota has been an issue, Alan. I think you can win some bets with this fast fact. Purdue is yet to win a game in the new Minnesota football stadium. It's not called TCF Financial anymore, but so again, that's been the real nemesis for Purdue. And in addition to Wisconsin, it's been Minnesota. But again, long story short, the schedule does set up very well. And again, that home opener against Penn State, my goodness, it's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, it's funny because you always say, and we can coach. Do this, we can look ahead and put the Swami hat on and try to figure out that's part of the fun when we're talking about the first week in June. Everybody's starting, especially the football folks, are starting to get antsy and starting to get with all the off season stuff, starting to think about that type of thing. And Yeah, you look at it, and I did a little bit of looking at the West Division in terms of crossover games. And part of your analysis, which is I think is spot on, is Purdue's crossover games are Penn State, Indiana, and Maryland. They got to go to Maryland, and they've got and they go to Indiana as well. But you look at the other teams that are perceived favorites. It's always interesting to me that Nebraska everybody thinks that Nebraska is going to, and maybe they will be. This will be the year that Scott Frost turns it around. But Nebraska has to go to Michigan. Wisconsin has to go to Michigan State and Ohio State. Iowa has Michigan at home, but also goes to Ohio State. Minnesota goes to Michigan State and Penn State. And if you put Northwestern in the mix, they go to Penn State, but they have Ohio State at home. Illinois, which would be a pretty dark horse candidate, has Michigan State, but has to go to Michigan in addition to Indiana. So there are some inherent advantages. You look at that schedule and say, but that's another thing where Purdue doesn't play. Every one of those teams plays one of the Big Ten Titans in the East Division, if you call, and I guess Purdue does too with Penn State, but certainly that of Michigan, Ohio State figure to be the two favorites in that division.
Yeah, there's no doubt, Alan. Ohio State's the prohibitive favorite. Let's just get that right on the table. Again, no big shock there. You may see them even as a preseason number one, if not Alabama. So CJ Stroud is going to be the straw that stirs the drink. He's going to get all the publicity, and rightly so. And they got a chip on their shoulder this year too. Remember, they didn't win the Big Ten last year, so they're highly motivated. But you get at Maryland, you get at Indiana, and you get Penn State at home as your cross division games. That's pretty good. And I know history doesn't matter, but Purdue's been to College Park, Maryland one time. That was under Darrell Hazel, and that was an absolute abomination.
50-7.
I remember watching it on television. It was an embarrassment. And Alan, speaking of embarrassments, not to relive the Darrell Hazel era, do you recall the last time Penn State visited Ross-Ade Stadium?
Oh yeah, and that was with Jared Parker, right?
That was they hung 62 points, I believe, and that was a record for an opponent.
Yeah,
Ross-Ade Stadium.
Jared Parker was there, and that game was, I think, tied at the half.
Was it really?
That. And Penn State, I think, was 24, or it was close. It was 24-17 or something. Penn State just went off. Jared Parker was the interim at that point, but yeah, that was not pretty in terms of Penn State coming to West Lafayette. And Purdue has only beat the Nittany Lions once, I believe.
Still, Tiller got him. I think Tiller got him.
Tiller got him in 2003.
He got him. I think he got him on the road once. I think he got him twice. Didn't he get him at home once?
No, he got him only in 2003 at home, and they lost. One of his most bitter defeats, I think, was 2007 there in a game that they thought they got robbed by the officials, and Tiller went to his grave lamenting that one. But yeah, they've had chances to beat Penn State. Of course, Drew Brees in 99.
Yeah, that was an epic game.
And they had first and goal at the 10-yard line and 4 chances to do it, and couldn't do it with Courtney Brown's. I think Penn State had 2 scoop and scores in that game. But the point is, it's never easy with Penn State, and we're not sitting here saying, "Oh, that's In fact, you tweeted last week in the wonderful world of Vegas that Purdue is an early 3-point underdog in that game as well, which I think stands to reason still, or it could stand to reason. Yeah.
I was shocked by why should Purdue be a home underdog to that team?
Well, so that surprised you at the Penn State deal.
It surprised me. I think if anything, it should be maybe a pick 'em, or Purdue should be given a point or two.
Yeah, and maybe by the time we get there, I guess maybe because Clifford's coming back and all that, maybe that's the factor. I don't know. I agree with you. I don't think Penn State showed anything that Purdue should be wildly afraid of. Purdue, we used to say early on in the Brom era, he lost his openers in 17, 18, and 19, right? But they won the last 2.
Yeah.
So we remember that game where all, the 2018 game against Northwestern, which is kind of a similar situation.
Yeah.
Where it was Northwestern, but Northwestern, I think, was defending. They came back, and of course that was the Rondale Moore where he had 300 all-purpose yards in the first half, but Purdue still lost. But that was a Labor Day weekend, Thursday night game. You know, Tom, you and I've watched a lot of Purdue games over the year. Boy, I can't think of a handful of openers that are any more important and bigger than this one. I mean, I go back to way back in the Wayback Machine. You were probably about 11, 12 years old. Purdue, Michigan State, 1978, with Kirk Gibson and company. The game wasn't on national TV in those days, but and Purdue won that game, and Jim Young turned that program around. But boy, season opening wide games, this is as big as it gets in Ross-Ade Stadium in quite a long time.
Yeah, you talked about or referenced that 2018 visit from Pat Fitzgerald's Wildcats. What an electric night that was.
It was. It was a great atmosphere.
You know, that was an NU team that went on to win the West. We've got to give Fitzy credit. But again, here we are a few years later with a similar game like you referenced. This Penn State game has a lot of those same earmarkings of importance as that 2018 game with the Wildcats. So, yeah, great opportunity there. And you look at the non-conference. I mean, you want to talk about friendly. Indiana State at home, of course, an FCS program, and Florida Atlantic coming to Ross-Ade Stadium for homecoming on the 24th. Now, sandwiched between those two games, Alan's a trip to Syracuse. Purdue has never been to Syracuse, from my knowledge.
Correct.
Do you know who the Syracuse coach is? You do, right?
Yeah, I do, because he was Dino Babers, right?
Dino Babers, next Jim Coletto.
And I used to play basketball against Dino Babers at lunchtime when he was on Jim Coletto's staff. He had the Orange 5-7 last year, 12th in the ACC. And yet Dino Babers, one to think, and you follow this stuff a lot more than I do, needs to turn some things around there. In what is not the Carrier Dome anymore, right? So that will be that. I think that will be a game. If you go back and look at handicapping games, and again, the fun thing that you get to do in the first week in that game, I think Purdue would be a favorite in that game, but it may be a touchdown or less. But you go back and that can be a tough place to play. Some teams have had some troubles playing there over the years. But didn't Clemson go up there and lose a couple of years ago, and that type of thing? But that'll be a fun experience for you. Have you ever been to Syracuse?
No, that's one of you. There's only like two campuses among Power 5 schools I've never been to. I've never been to Stanford's campus, and I've never been to Syracuse. So yeah, I've never been up to that part of New York before. So you're right. I kind of wish. You and I remember some of those vintage years when Syracuse really was kind of a power, and that program just has really lost a lot of luster the last, 15, 20 years, right, Alan? Yeah. I mean, I can go back to Donovan McNabb and all the great running backs, going back further to guys, of course, like way back, Floyd Little, way back, Jim Brown, right?
Right.
But yeah, it's and again, that's a scary game, obviously. Anytime you go on the road, it's always scary. But you're right; Purdue should be a slight favorite, I would think. And again, a great opportunity. It's a very manageable non-conference schedule. And again, Alan, then you take the lid off. And now you don't take the lid off, but I guess the second Big Ten game, that trip to Minnesota on October 1st. I got on my computer and I pulled up the all-time win-loss. Each game between these two teams, Alan, Purdue's not won in the Twin Cities since 2007.
Right.
And I didn't even want to get into recounting some of the recent pain and suffering endured by Purdue up there in recent years. Sort of how Purdue's been Iowa's tormentor. Minnesota, in a lot of ways, has been Purdue's tormentor. So that's a hump that Jeff Brom and Purdue really need to get over. Jeff Brom's only beaten PJ Fleck one time, and that was the very first time they met. I remember I was at the game in 2017, and it was I think it was the rain delay game, right?
Right. They had a 30-minute rain delay, and and Purdue, Jawan Bentley had a pick six. I think that game ended up being a 13-point game, but only because of that.
They were that close to losing that game, Alan.
Oh yeah, they were. Minnesota was driving, and then Bentley had the pick six and won that game in a game that a wall cloud came up. Purdue had about a 30-minute thunderstorm. They evacuated the stadium and came back in, finished the game. It's happened a couple times in Ross-Ade Stadium history. I remember the Eastern Illinois game in Bob Spoo in 2006 as well. And maybe also the great Steve Letnich, 1989. Purdue, Miami of Ohio had a lightning delay. Somebody got struck by lightning or didn't get killed in Ross-Ade Stadium, but I remember as well. But you look at going to Minnesota and getting over the hump, and that's really what it's going to take Minnesota. That game 2 years ago and in the pandemic up there was hard for Jeff Brom to stomach, and the call that didn't go Purdue's way. And then the Boilermakers last year, one of their poorest performances of the season, in my view, the game in the rain in Ross-Ade Stadium, when it really looked dark for Purdue after that loss. And then 2 weeks later, they have a bye and they go out to Iowa. So that part is interesting. Syracuse, I was going to go regret back to that. Big Irish town, the biggest. I've been to Syracuse once, and that was in 1987. And Purdue played out there in the NCAA tournament. Yeah. Played Northeastern and then played Florida. The M&M boys, Vernon Maxwell and Andrew Moten got beat out there. But the biggest you're not going to be out there for St. Patrick's Day, and I don't ever recommend that, because biggest St. Patrick's Day you could ever hope to see was in Syracuse, New York. We couldn't get out of the hotel, and they changed the lights from red, yellow, green to green. They actually changed the stoplights to promote St. Patty's Day. That's what I remember. So you'll have a good experience. It is an interesting place out there. I've been out there for actually a couple of times, because I remember as a ball manager, Leo Routens, and Jim Boeheim was still the coach in basketball back then. When Purdue played out there in 1981 too, and got beat. Out in at the Carrier Dome. So football first time there. Wisconsin, that schedule also, you look at your home games. Again, you always have that. You have Nebraska, which is going to be a huge game. They're all going to be big if you're going to win the division. And Purdue hopes to have a chance to do that, you've got to take care of business at home. You follow this close. I mean, is Nebraska? You're looking down the road. Is this the year they turn it around, or how do you view? I know this is not your day-to-day job covering the Cornhuskers, but you certainly know Big Ten football as good as anybody. How do you see the Cornhuskers in terms of what they might bring to the table when they come to Ross-Ade Stadium? I think on the 15th of October.
And just a lot of questions there. Purdue's, I think by my count, going to face 1, 2, 3 coaches I would say are on the hot seat. Dino Babers, I think Michael Oxley's seat at Maryland's a little warm. And then that brings us to Scott Frost, who may sit on the hottest seat of all in the Big Ten and as far as opponents on Purdue's schedule, obviously. So 33 new scholarship players are on the Nebraska roster. Almost half the roster it's going to be new. They have been very active in the portal. They've got, as of this recording, 15 transfer portal additions. Purdue's got 9. So again, give you a little perspective there. It's all the chips are getting pushed in the middle of the table by Scott Frost here. It's win now. And I even wonder if going 6-6 and making it to some meaningless bowl is going to be enough. I, like a lot of people, am vexed and flummoxed and confused when I look at these early prognostications and see such a lofty perch for Nebraska by some of these prognosticators. I don't see it. I'm sure maybe the chemistry will click quickly. They have a transfer quarterback from Texas. They got a big defensive end from TCU, and one from Texas Tech, a wide receiver from Texas, on and on. They got a safety from Alabama, defensive tackle from Alabama, and just is gone. a lot of new personnel. So yeah, that's going to be a fascinating game. And again, that's an opponent like Iowa for Purdue that the Boilermakers have really sort of had their thumb on, and it's got to drive Nebraska crazy. And Purdue's got to be able to take care of business at home against these guys. And it's so crazy. I never would have thought growing up or even into this deep into the 90s that
no doubt
I never think, Purdue can take care of Nebraska. It's become almost expected now. It's crazy how your life can change. So yeah, that's a huge one. But for me, Alan, it goes without saying, you got to protect your home turf. You know, the make or break games are always your road games. And the at Syracuse, at Minnesota, at Maryland. I'm not going to count on the Wisconsin game in Madison. Then you got at Illinois and at Indiana. You know, Alan, if you really want to win the West, you got to win all those, but maybe Wisconsin. You got to win in Bloomington. You got to win in Champaign. You got to win in College Park. You got to win in the Twin Cities, and you got to win at Syracuse. I don't, you know, and that's it. And that's got to be the standard for this team, I think, especially with a quarterback like Aiden O'Connell and all this talent coming back.
Yeah, you would look at it, and again, this is a June 4th look at this, but Wisconsin has to go to Michigan State and Ohio State. So if Purdue could somehow hold serve, and again, this is nutty talk, I understand, hold serve, lose at Wisconsin loses both of those games, you know, you at least got the Badgers with 2 losses and you could win the division. But that assumes, you know, it's interesting. The other team that, and you've done more reading on this too, Maryland is interesting because you talk about Mike Locksley, and Purdue has to go there. They have been a little bit of a, I don't know if a flavor of the month, but people, some think to get better. You're shaking your head.
I mean, I like Mike Locksley, but I don't think he's much of a head coach. And they're a team that always wins signing day and the off season, but they're never very tough, and they always struggle, I think, in the trenches on both sides of the ball. And Alan, the one thing he does have this year, he's got a very good quarterback. And Tungaliavoa, the younger brother of the Miami quarterback, he's probably, I think, the 3rd best quarterback in the conference behind Stroud and O'Connell. Maybe he's the 2nd best quarterback, depending on who you ask. So he does have that going for him. But I was thinking while you were talking about the quarterbacks Purdue's going to face, and it just in the Big Ten, Alan, there's not a lot on the surface right now, a lot of really daunting quarterbacks. Yeah. Indiana's got a question. Northwestern's got a question. Illinois' got a question. How good is Graham Mertz at Wisconsin? How good is Spencer Petras at Iowa? I talked about Nebraska. They're probably going to have the Texas kid, Casey Thompson. Minnesota, Tanner Morgan. So again, you know, you talked about Clifford at Penn State. There's a lot of these teams don't have great quarterbacks. Now, I don't want to overstate the importance of having a good quarterback, but it does matter. And Purdue certainly has a good one. And that's going to go a long way, I think, toward giving them a shot each time that they kick off on these Saturdays in the fall.
You know, it's funny because Tanner Morgan, I mean, of course, with COVID, I mean, how many more years? Of course, people say the same thing about Aiden O'Connell. Tanner Morgan pitched almost the perfect game in his game at Ross-Ade Stadium, going 21 or 22 or whatever that was back 3 years ago?
Yeah, Alan, that was I was going to that was one of the worst days in Ross-Ade Stadium history. That was the day that Rondale Moore and Elijah Sindler got hurt on the same play. That was against Minnesota. So, like I said, the dark cloud that Minnesota brings, it's just been really painful for fans.
Yeah, it has, and it is okay. Last, and you're not a bookie. I'm not sure. I don't know about your private life or whether you gamble. I don't. But that 7.5 wins at Purdue just seems. Just looking at the schedule, seems I would be taking it over on that. And again, trying to take my Purdue blinders off. I look at the schedule and I agree with you. I think your games of real question are Syracuse, certainly, but I think it's a game you win. I think you win at Maryland. I think Minnesota will be tough. Wisconsin, I'm not going to put that in the bag either. But I think of those 4 or 5 games, if you can win, you know, I really do see 9-3 for Purdue is very, very possible, assuming that the quarterback stays healthy. What say you on that?
I agree. I think an 8 or 9 win season would seem to be in the fold here. I would like you would take the over. How many games as of right now would Purdue be an underdog in? We know the Penn State game they are for some reason.
Yeah, at least at this point.
They'll be favored against Indiana State, favored at Syracuse, favored against Florida Atlantic, at Minnesota, Allen, at Maryland. I think maybe they could be maybe a point or two underdog at Minnesota. Probably a slight favorite at Maryland, favorite against Nebraska at home, underdog at Wisconsin, maybe a pick 'em against Iowa at home, maybe a slight favorite. And I think they'll be favored in the last three at Illinois, Northwestern, at Indiana. So, yeah, just going to be a lot of fun, my friend. It's going to be a lot of fun. I know they're doing well with their ticket sales, and I'm excited, and I don't think it's an overstatement. I'd like your perspective. Do you think this could be Jeff Brom's best team?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look, yes and no. Yes, because of the schedule, and I think he's in a chance to win. The only thing that concerns me, and this is is finding a playmaker. He's had playmakers or guys that, maybe in 17 he didn't, but his offense was so dynamic that they were able to, David Blau had such a great year. You had Rondale Moore and or David Bell. That to me is going to be a question, but I will say, and I think that's the lesson of the bowl game that means so much, is that I understand that was the craziest last 5 minutes of a football game I think I think it's still going on, Tom. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was a long game.
Crazy. And Tennessee doesn't think the game's over. But my point is, just finding that playmaker, I think you look at it, if reading your materials analysis, there's enough there. But Tyrone Tracy, I don't know. There may be some additional transfer portal additions by the time that this airs. That part could be a thing as well. But do they have enough playmakers? But Brom seems to, and company seem to be able to manufacture as many. So maybe I'm overthinking that. That's my only concern, though, is you don't have that. And defensively, I like the way that they've got balance. Do they have and they have a playmaker? I think they have Jalen Graham is a legitimate big time playmaker. He turned Purdue's season around in some ways, or at least certainly helped it get to where Purdue got last year with that play at Nebraska. So maybe that's enough. How do you view that? Does it come down to just finding guys that can play at the receiving position and be able to stretch defenses? And they showed they could do that and they've got obviously tight ends too. We've talked about that, but they showed they could do that against Tennessee. Will that be good enough for them to be competitive?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. The concern on both sides of the ball are finding difference makers. And Jalen Graham is very good. I think they're worried about a difference maker on the line.
Yeah.
You don't have a George Karlaftis, obviously. Do they have anybody that can be a reasonable facsimile? Can a couple guys raise their level of play to maybe be that pass rusher that they're going to need? They got a lot of good options, I think. I'm not going to bet against Mark Hagan developing somebody. Just some really good-looking guys, Alan. I really like Corday Sidner a lot, the redshirt freshman. I like Scotty Humpich, the transfer from Murray State. And don't forget, they got the kid coming in from Texas, the freshman Nick Caraway, 4-star recruit who I know they like a lot. And I know it's a lot to put on a freshman's shoulders, but that could be a guy there that they're going to give a long look to. Maybe he can be a difference maker off the edge. So if they can get some type of playmaking ability up front on defense, that's big. That's their question. And he talked about offensively, the receiving position. You're exactly right. My money's on Brock Thompson, the star of the Music City Bowl. He had surgery this spring. He had rods put in each of his shins. He had one rod already in one shin, and that had to get replaced. He had to have a rod put in his other shin. I'm told everything went A-okay, and he's ready to go, Alan. And I think he's going to be really good. He's very motivated. I'll just put it at that. You talked about Tyrone Tracy. That's another guy, man. I tell you what, he could end up being the best of them all, honestly. It's kind of fun not to get off on a tangent, but Tyrone Tracy, Brock Thompson, and Reese Taylor, who's a transfer from Indiana, who's a cornerback. Those three guys kind of grew up together playing youth football, and they have a real bond, and they're really excited to play with each other. And all three of them, I think, are going to have a big impact. Of course, Thompson already has, but again, Tyrone Tracy, Reese Taylor, maybe as a return man too, is going to be fun to watch. So, and again, lastly, Alan, I think the offensive line, running the football in short yardage situations, that's always a perpetual issue.
Right.
It sort of is what it is at this point, I think. Jeff Brom always has to figure out a way how to manufacture a ground game. But you know what, again, you are what you are, right? You can't be everything to everybody, and Purdue certainly can throw the ball and generate big plays. Conversely, they're not so good when it comes to running the ball in the red zone. But hey, man, 9 wins with the worst rushing offense in the Big Ten. They found a way last year, right?
Yeah, good points. Brock Thompson may go down his performance in the Music City Bowl, with considering where he was physically.
A lot of pain.
Got to be on the short list of the greatest performances in Purdue. And I'm trying not to overstate things here, but you'd be hard pressed to have a more dynamic performance, especially none of us even know exactly what the kid was feeling, but put together in that game was absolutely unbelievable. And like I said, in terms of Herculean performances in the history of Purdue football, he's going to be on a short list because of what he did. So yeah, I like his, you have to love that kid's attitude, the family, what they're bringing to the table. And like you said, there's nothing like, especially in this world now with NIL, transfer portal, everything else, you want guys that are motivated and are focused. And that you've got a quarterback that showed that he was second team all Big Ten, capable of being at that level, and also very focused, very motivated. You got to keep him healthy. And that's going to be a storyline to watch. So we have solved every question, answered every question for the first week of June that you could ever want to know. Tom will be filling us full of wisdom here for the next few weeks. And as I misspoke before Indianapolis starts here in the Big Ten, and it is weird. I don't know what they're going to do about that. Will they ever have that luncheon again? That was such a big deal.
I think my guess is it's probably gone forever. Think about this, not to prolong things, but so somebody pointed out to me, they used to have a little autograph session too, where they had tables. I think Alan, these guys are going to want to be paid.
Yeah,
they're not going to sign autographs for free. So that was a point somebody made to me as well. So I think the days of that banquet are probably over. I don't think the coaches were a big fan of it. So again, it was really cool. I mean, I'm sure you went to a lot of them. I was at a few of them. So yeah, that was sort of an old school tradition, and I'm guessing maybe over.
Yeah, and then COVID world, you throw all that in there, and it just makes it even more challenging. But yeah, it is, and that is a topic for down the road, because just the touch and the feel of college football and some of the things that are going on, it's going to have its challenges when it comes to those types of items, of getting the fans feeling like they're embracing that. But Tom, always appreciate wisdom. We appreciate that in all situations. I want to thank our sponsor, the Union Club Hotel, the 811 Bistro. We look forward to and thankful for their sponsorship. I think we're going to try to generate a couple Facebook Lives this year. Tom and I will sit in the whiskey room again, and we won't drink whiskey, but we will sit there and try to talk some Purdue football, hopefully in the 2022 season as well. Always fun to do that. And even when Tom was in the audience with his mom, when Brian Newbert made an appearance, we had fun with that as well. It's always good to be able to talk football. And the Union Club Hotel is obviously a focal point for the Purdue campus, and we appreciate their business. So, Tom, have a great rest of the week. We'll be back next week. Mr. Newbert, I think, will be back on board as we get into the second week of June. I think we're going to get into they'll be recruiting, I'm sure. And there's always news anymore in this world, and we'll look forward to that as well. Have a great week, everybody. Thanks for watching and listening.